I didn't think you'd come.
It's time for Luke's downfall, and we're left again with a big cliffhanger. Let's break down Cruel Summer Season 2, Episode 9 and find out just what happened. What's going on, y'all? This was quite an episode, huh? Like, the last few minutes of this episode and last episode, they're really leaving us on some cliffhangers, so I will warn you ahead of time, I'm probably gonna ramble a lot in this video. It might be a little longer than normal because I got thoughts, I got theories, like I got my Mountain Dew. I'm hyped up, I'm ready to go. We got a lot of things to talk about. But we are really getting somewhere now with this season, and I'm just hoping that this finale is a good one, because I will say that this season has been a bit all over the place for me, but the cliffhanger this episode, like I said in last episode, I wish it kind of had been this exciting all season long. But before I get into the recap for this episode, I just want to let you know, if you missed it, I did put up my breakdown for episode 8 a couple hours ago, so it is up, so that also explained why I was late on that episode, so go check it out if you haven't yet before you watch this video, or, you know, it's up to you, obviously. But I said it in that video, and I want to say it again in this video, that I fully support the actors and the writers who are currently on strike. I have put some links down in the description below, so if you want to learn more about why they are on strike, some of the misconceptions about why they're on strike, about how not every actor is rich and stuff like that, and how what they're asking for really is reasonable and barely puts a dent in the studio's like budgets and stuff. Like, they actually gave more than what these people are asking for to like bonuses for their executives and stuff. But I don't want to continue to ramble about that, but I do just want to say that that is the reason why I was delayed in putting up videos, because I wanted to make sure I didn't cross any lines according to the SAG-AFTRA and the WGA guidelines for journalists and influencers and stuff. So my reviews and commentary are totally fine per an email they sent me, so we're good to go. But I did just want to say that I support the actors and the writers, because without them we wouldn't have these shows for me to ramble about, or these movies, and for us to connect with, obviously, and hang out together and just like go crazy thinking about what could be happening in these shows. And I will say that I have one interview that was filmed pre-strike with the cast of High School Musical, the musical series, with Frankie, Dara, and Julia. That's going to be coming out the first week of August, so I just wanted to give you a heads up about that and how that was pre-filmed and pre-approved, and no rules have been broken with that. But now, hold on, let me get a sip of, I need my juice to power through this. Mountain Dew, please sponsor me, because I love you. Anyway, let's dive into this episode of Cruel Summer, called The Miseducation of Luke Chambers. This is very much a Luke episode. He gets his own episode that shows his downfall from good guy into the lying bad guy kind of scum that we found him to be tied to the bed now in these most recent episodes. We basically learn more about Steve and Luke's relationship, what happened to Luke's mom, and one thing I do love about this show that I've mentioned before in season 1, and I think even at the beginning of this season, is their use of color for these timelines. I think season 1 handled the flip-flopping of the timelines and the point of views a little bit better than this season has been, but the colors are still very, very cool, the color grading to distinguish the different timelines. This episode, we only really have 2 timelines. We start kind of in the fall of 1999, and it runs into the winter timeline, and you can just watch the colors fade from the bright, sunny summertime colors into that dark blue drab tone that we've seen in the winter 99 timeline in the past episodes, and I just kind of love how that really plays along with the fall of Luke. Okay, but like I said, this episode starts in the fall of 1999 and then ends up running into the winter 99 New Year's timeline. We don't have any summer 2000 in this episode, but as always, I have time codes down below so you can skip around, because trust me, I got some thoughts and theories after this one, so this might be a long video. But first, here's a very kind of short version that's not going to dive too much into the fall timeline, but give you the gist of it, that fall to winter timeline. We basically see Luke go from nice guy to scum, and he ends up fighting more with his dad over college, and Luke wanting to go into the Coast Guard, which would be a disgrace, of course, to, you know, Steve Chambers. We also see Luke get egged on by the boys about not having the balls to film him and Megan and stuff like that, but we also see Isabella's jealousy really start to show and causing a rift in Megan and Luke. And all of this eventually leads Luke to leaking his own tape at the party to try to get back at his dad. So yes, last episode, Luke did not cop up to that when he was tied to the bed. He still lied about it not being him, which I'm still not sure why, because you might as well have just told all the truth, buddy, because just holding on to that one lie is not going to save you. But anyway, he basically, after all the fights with his dad and stuff, leaks that tape to try to get back at his dad. Kind of not understanding, I think, that he was hurting more than just his dad with that action. But yeah, so that's essentially what goes on in that timeline. If you want more in depth of this timeline, keep the video playing right now. Otherwise, you can skip ahead to the New Year's timeline with Luke being tied up in the bed and what happens after that with the time codes. Okay, our deeper dive into the fall 1999. We start in September as we find Luke watching old home movies of the family and Megan at the cabin back when his mom was alive, and everyone just seemed so happy. Now, this day is his mom's birthday, and Luke is relaxing in the pool. They're gonna have this barbecue to celebrate, but leave it to Brent to take things too far for like the 500th time, and Steve too for the 500th time excuse Brent's behavior. The boys are then celebrating with this barbecue and some tennis games and stuff, and are sharing memories of mom, and we finally have Steve kind of saying something nice about Luke, I guess you could say, as Steve tells Luke that he has his mom's sense of humor and that he reminds Steve of her sometimes. But that also kind of explains maybe why Steve and Luke have such a strange relationship since her death. We've seen that with grief in real life with people, you know, if somebody kind of like reminds you of somebody who passed away, you just can't look at them the same, or it's just too painful in a way. Of course, Brent just can't take it when he's not the golden child being doted on, so when Brent hears Steve say that like compliment to Luke, Brent quickly ruins the mood by calling Luke feminine and whatnot, and just I have no reason to like Brent at this moment. Then we're at the first day of school, and we know how Isabella was very excited for high school in the last episode, but we kind of start to see Isabella's jealousy coming into full swing as we have her giving Luke and Megan this magazine compatibility quiz, and you know, this made me laugh because I used to love those quizzes. I had no one to be compatible with, but you bet people I was taking those quizzes just pretending to answer it as Jesse McCartney or somebody like that, you know? But we actually see Megan and Luke disagree on a few things, and this is kind of the start of seeing that maybe they aren't really telling each other everything, or maybe on the same page. Now we also have Luke wanting to hang out with the girls rather than go play hoops with the boys, so maybe he is getting a bit too smothering himself. Like last episode he was calling Isabella jealous and smothering, but it seems like, you know, it's like the Spider-Man meme, I guess you could say. They're just both pointing at each other because they look exactly the same. Also, this is just a note from editor Lisa, who's inserting this clip as I'm editing it. I realized that this episode completely shifted the narration from the girls to Luke's point of view pretty much, which is why I feel like it seems like maybe he could be exaggerating the intensity of Isabella's jealousy. Was it always that bad? Because throughout the rest of the show, it seemed a little bit more subtle. Maybe it's just enhanced because this is Luke's point of view. Anyway, we then jump ahead to October, where Luke confides in Megan about how he and his dad have nothing in common, and it's just gotten worse with Brent at college because there's nothing to talk about, and this rift has grown between them ever since his mom died. And then things get kind of serious, I guess, when Luke says that he wants to put Megan down as his emergency contact. It then gets worse for Luke, though, as he goes to see Steve at Steve's office, and you can tell that Luke doesn't give a crap about business. Steve's just blabbing around, being like, this is gonna be all yours, and this is what you're gonna learn at Branson or whatever. And then Luke mentions wanting to go into the Coast Guard, and you would think that Luke said he wanted to commit the most heinous of crimes because Steve legit just blows his gasket hearing this, spewing dumb stuff around, just like saying that happiness is overrated, and if Luke ever wants a family to provide for them, like he's been provided for, that you can't worry about like doing something that makes you happy. Don't do a hobby. You have to do like put in your work with this like horrible job that just gets you by so you can have nice things, because what matters in life is status and nice things, according to Steve. Well, after that didn't go so well, Luke goes to the work at the police station, and that's where he gets his supportive fatherly advice from the sheriff, who tells Luke that the Coast Guard application like came in the mail because Luke knew better than to have that sent to his actual house. But the sheriff encourages Luke to talk to Steve again instead of kind of blindsiding Steve at some point if he does choose to go into the Coast Guard. But Luke isn't so sure.
If I do this, I'm pulling the ripcord and blowing up my life.
Sometimes that's the only way to live your dream.
Alright, but Luke is now definitely worried about his future. At the cabin, he starts to be like, oh, to Megan, you know, when you go to college, you'll make new friends and forget about me stuff. Then we fast forward to Halloween and November, and you really see Isabella's jealousy come into full effect. For Halloween, the trio are dressed as characters from The Matrix, and Isabella talks about the fake ID being the gift that keeps on giving. So this episode, we have her and Megan using the fake IDs multiple times. When Megan goes upstairs and Isabella is left with Luke, that's when she basically tells Luke that Megan is going to go follow Megan's dreams, and Luke should go follow his own and not just be Megan's charming accomplice, because that job's already filled by Isabella. Isabella then says,
"And there isn't enough room in our life for both of us."
and it's like, damn, girl, okay, like, you're really trying to claim your territory here. But also, did her saying that to Luke to go get some other hobbies, follow your own dreams, kind of remind anybody else about the Barbie movie, if you saw that, and Ken's storyline? Then we head to the Chambers house where the guys are listening to Brent talk about filming college girls and that whole thing, and they start ragging on Luke, and Brent says that, you know, Luke needs to step up his game before Megan gets bored because she's a smart girl and all of this. And they basically say that Luke doesn't have the balls to make a tape. And well, now we kind of know why Luke went and filmed the tape with Megan, because, you know, back then, not back then, but even some guys, you just can't, if you give them a dare, they're gonna go do it because they have to, like, prove that they're manly in some ways. We then see that Luke is napping on the couch at Megan's house as Megan and Isabella return home, and it seems like Megan blew off Luke to go hang with Isabella and go to a pub using their fake IDs. So somehow now we see the shift in Megan spending all her time with Luke to now going back to spending all her time with Isabella. And this is before the tape happens, so, like, naturally somehow that they just shifted and we didn't really see exactly why, because kind of last we saw what Megan was attached to Luke and Isabella was the jealous one, and now all of a sudden it's like, while we're seeing Luke's progression, they didn't really show us, you know, how Isabella is able to win Megan back over and get the time back with her. But yeah, Isabella kind of rubs it in Luke's face that they got into the pub and how Luke wouldn't have been able to get in anyway because last time he tried to use a fake ID, it didn't work. And then Isabella makes the situation even worse by saying that this guy at the pub was hitting on Megan all night. And this is kind of when we really start to see the colors, like I mentioned earlier, go drab as we inch closer to catching up with the December and the New Year's timeline, as Luke runs into Jeff at the police station, where Jeff calls Luke out for not being a friend and being respectful and giving Jeff a heads up before stealing his girl. Kind of the same speech that Jeff gave Megan, and I'm just gonna right now take this moment to give a formal apology to Jeff. There a few episodes ago in my recap video, I was way harder on you than I should have been. I don't know what was going on with me that day, but I was reading into things a little differently than other people, and I realized you had the right to be upset, even though it was kind of like you knew she was in love with the other guy, but you had the right to be upset, and I apologize to you, Jeff. But also, this episode made me like Jeff better because he says something very similar to what we saw Isabella say to Luke last episode about how Luke is actually worse than Brent because Luke pretends or thinks he's actually a nice guy when he's not. And I just gotta say amen to that, because that's why you gotta watch out for those self-proclaimed nice guys. You know, there are genuinely nice guys out there, but the genuinely nice guys usually don't try to tell you they're nice guys all the time, like to compensate, to like blind you from bad things. Okay, but moving on. We're finally up to December, where Megan, Luke, and Isabella are hanging out the cabin because they've ditched school, like having a ditch day. Like we see Megan really starting to rebel now because she's never ditched class before. And again, Luke is blindsided by Megan and Isabella revealing they have plans to travel the next summer and all of this, and Luke is just upset that Megan has never told him any of this. And Megan's like, well, I wasn't sure it was gonna happen, so why would I mention it to you at this point? And now the jealousy really is just, woo, it's brewing a lot, especially with like Isabella and Luke having this tension and this stare down as like Isabella's like, yeah, she's gonna go see the world, like staring deep into Luke's eyes, and Luke being like, well, no, she's gonna stay with me. And it's just like the lasers, I feel like, just, or dagger fight, or yeah, or you know when like, what is it, Superman and whoever, they just have the lasers come out and they just hit each other at a point. It's like this push and pull. That's what I feel like was happening right then. But honestly here, I'm like, Megan, how are you not seeing this right in front of you, that these two people are fighting over you, and how is it not making you uncomfortable? It's beyond me. But moving on, we have Luke again going to see his dad, and you know it's not going to end well, and basically Luke says that he got into Branson, so Steve's super happy and proud, but again, that immediately fades when Luke also says he got into the Coast Guard, and Steve is now pissed like someone killed his dog or something. He's just super angry, saying that he is not paying for the Coast Guard and he's tired of having to fix Luke, and Luke finally just lets out his pent-up frustration.
You don't care about me. You've never cared about me.
Excuse me?
Brent is your only real son. I'm just this constant disappointment. You've just resented me ever since the night of the accident, and you know it.
Okay, so we learn now how Luke's mom died. So what is this accident? Well, seems like Luke and his mom were in a car accident, and his mom is the one who passed away, and that's, it turns out that it should have been Steve in the car with Luke, because Steve was supposed to actually take Luke to get new cleats, but a work thing came up and Steve bailed, so Luke's mom ended up having to take him. So it makes a little bit more sense of why Steve is an asshole to Luke. It doesn't obviously excuse it, but it gives us a little bit more insight of their relationship together. I think they both kind of feel guilty about the mom dying in that car accident. So then Luke goes and sits on Megan's porch where he confides in her, saying,
You ever feel like running away? Starting fresh, no pressure, no expectations.
What an interesting thing to say, right? I'll get to that more in my theories section, but it totally also made me almost spit out my Mountain Dew that I was drinking from laughing when Megan tells Luke that she knows when he's lying. And I'm just like, girl, I think, no, you don't know when he's lying, because in the winter timeline, when he's confessing all the things that he lied to you about, you look freaking shocked. Okay, but now we are finally caught up to the infamous Christmas party, and after another fight with Steve over Branson, where Steve tells Luke that he's embarrassing him and slams him up against a cart, which Luke has had enough. It was indeed Luke that had the staff play the sex tape at the party. In that moment, you knew that Luke really only wanted to hurt and embarrass his dad, and definitely, to me, wasn't thinking about the consequences it would end up having for himself and the girls. Maybe he just saw it as a way to have the dad disown him and he could just go off and do his own thing. But yeah, I feel like that's basically why we saw Luke scramble so much after the Christmas party this season and grovel, and it's just the snowball effect, how one little action can just make everything come tumbling down for more than just you or who you intended. But yeah, I'm still wondering though why Luke was lying about that to the girls when he was tied up and has a gun being pointed at him. Why hold on to this lie again that's gonna come bite you in the butt later on when it finally does ever come out? But whatever, doesn't matter, because that tape ends up earning Luke brownie points with all the boys, and of course they still believe that it's Isabella on the tape at this point, and they're like, I bet you could never do that with Megan, she'd never let you. And Luke's kind of like, oh, just give me time, I can pull it off with Megan. But Brent actually is like, I don't think you can. Oh, poor Brent, if you only knew, right? We then see Luke trying to sleep with Megan again at the cabin, but she of course is like, yeah, this place is tainted.
Camera, it's not a predator.
Is there really a difference?
It's kind of like, shut up, Luke. You knew damn well what you and your brother were doing, and you're both predators. It's not the camera's fault. You're trying to blame it on an inanimate object. And he also just kind of does in this moment what I also hate seeing a lot of guys do, which is saying I love you and not actually meaning it, but saying it in order to just get what you want, which a lot of times that you see in these teen movies and TV shows is to get sexy time. I will say one thing this show has done a good job of was making you root for Luke up until obviously these last few episodes, and it just kind of feels like this.
I was rooting for you! We were all rooting for you! How dare you!
But then we do a little bit of a jump forward to Luke at home playing video games, and Luke telling Steve how things with Megan have been very different since the tape came out, and Steve essentially telling Luke that it's time to break up with Megan and go sow your wild oats, essentially. So yeah, that basically covers Luke's fall from grace, and now we're caught up to the winter and New Year's Day timeline. So Isabella did indeed graze Luke with that bullet, but it was just on the ear, but that led to the bloody pillowcase. Also, that blood totally soaked through that pillow, right? Was that pillow included in the sheets bag? But we have everyone obviously freaking out, and Luke telling Isabella that, you wanted me out of the picture this whole time, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. And now given the context, obviously, of the rest of this episode, it's very much true that more than we thought probably that she definitely wanted Luke out of the picture, but probably not in this way. But Luke ends up begging to be untied so he can tend to his wound. We have Megan attempting to kind of clean up a little bit of Luke's ear, but Isabella just says, you know what, you and me, Megan, we should just leave him here so we can think about what's going on and what he's done, because the wound isn't that bad. And then Isabella's like, just in case anybody comes to the cabin because they've heard the shot and comes looking for Luke or whatever, Isabella decides to take the tape from the camcorder for collateral and tells Luke to not say anything, otherwise this tape is definitely getting out. She then leaves and we're left with just Luke and Megan does indeed tell Luke that she's pregnant. And Luke, of course, thinks she's joking, and then he's like, well, we can just text my dad, he'll know how to take care of this, which just makes Megan even madder. Megan then is done with Luke and says she never wants to see him again and leaves. We eventually see Luke get his hand free and untie himself, and I know some of you thought that he didn't seem that incapacitated from the small clips of the trailers of him wandering around the woods, but definitely seems like when you get the full sequence, he is definitely out of it here from the, blood loss, the pills and the drink and the shock and stuff, and he manages to get dressed, grab a flashlight, and somehow make his way to the dock. Now he starts to hear all the things as he's walking there that people have said about him being a failure or a bad guy and all this, and how Megan doesn't want to see him again, and that's when we see him kind of sit down on the edge of the dock, and for a second, I won't lie, I thought he was just gonna go but instead he pulls out his pager and sends a message to someone, but we don't see who it is or what it says. We then see that both Megan and Isabella are at home in bed, but neither can sleep, and then we go back to the dock and see that someone comes walking up, and Luke looks at them and says, I didn't think you'd come, and that's where the episode ends, and we now have a bunch of theories flying around. Right, everybody? Alright, so let's get into it. My thoughts after this episode, because I feel like I got a lot. I can't be the only one who paused on Luke's pager to see what we could see, right? All I ended up seeing was the numbers, 752 or something, so I tried to look that up. I don't even think that was an area code, and it's not pager code for anything, so it must be the start of a phone number, and we just don't know who he's sending this message to, because I quickly tried to look through the past episodes really quickly to see if there was any phone numbers that popped up, but the number on the missing flyers doesn't match that, even with the area code or even with the first three numbers, because usually shows use 555, so I don't know. There's probably clues that if we go back and rewatch everything, we might have picked up, but also not me trying to pause for that 1 second at the very end of the episode where you can sort of see the shadow of a leg to be like, ooh, is this a man's leg, a woman's leg, is this jeans, is this khakis, cargo shorts, what is this? Are those footsteps, the sound of them, are they heavy like a man's, could it be somebody else, what kind of shoes does it sound like? These shows with these mysteries really just take over my brain, but I can't be the only one who's doing that, right? Okay, but seeing that Luke paged someone, do we think that this is a person that he is paging to come help Luke, or do we think that the person ends up being the one who kills Luke and pushes him maybe into the water? Or obviously the theories about Luke still being alive and faking his own death seem to have become more to the forefront lately, it seems like. I feel like a lot of us are now leaning that way, because there's some timeline things in this show that just haven't seemed like they match up quite right. But Luke saying, I didn't think you'd come. Let's talk about that and what it could mean, because the way that he says it, I didn't think you'd come, makes me think it's someone he's not on good terms with right now, which honestly is probably everybody on the show, except maybe the sheriff. But then I'm like, okay, Luke having this pager is to show that that's kind of his status symbol, right? We haven't seen anybody else on the show really with a pager. It kind of just shows that Luke is rich. So who else could have a pager? Obviously, I would think his dad would have one. Brent would have one. Would the sheriff or Ned have one? But let's run through those choices that I just mentioned. First with Ned, I feel like I'm still not really thinking that he's involved. Why would Luke have Ned's number? What would he think that Ned could help him with? Unless it was Luke being I need to escape, this man's pro hacker, maybe he can fix my identity, give me a new identity, and help me just run away. Plus, Luke knows that Ned doesn't like his dad, so what if they could be ooh, fake my death, you can take down my dad type of thing. As for Steve, we do know Steve is a grade A asshole. Now Luke telling Steve, I bet you wish I had died instead of mom, kind of made me think, well, what if Luke paged Steve to come see him and offered up the solution of, hey dad, I've screwed everything up, I've embarrassed you, no one would care if I'm gone, so why don't we fake my death so you can get my life insurance money since your business is going down the tubes, and I don't have to embarrass you anymore, and you can get all this sympathy and people will feel bad for you, right? Especially since Luke mentioned to Megan after the pregnancy thing, texting his dad to have his dad fix things. That just seems to be where Luke always goes when he's in trouble, and right now, he knows he's in trouble. These two girls just did this to him, called out as all lies, and like he needs a fixer. He needs to call in Olivia Pope to fix his shit, right? So maybe he did page his dad to be like, I messed up for the 500th time, please come help me. And another reason I think that this could be true is that to me, Steve, like, I get grieving can cause people to react in certain ways, maybe overreact, whatever, but Steve just seems so not authentic to me in this 2000 summer timeline, and he seems to just be overcompensating too much, trying too hard to get the girls to be the perfect scapegoat. Plus, remember when he was like identifying the body when the sheriff brought up on shore, I think like episode 2? I feel like only Steve got a close-up look at it, and it was really quick, and he just goes, it's immediately like, oh, that's him. I'm like, no one else really saw the body. Like, could he have lied about it being Luke? But then that would mean I feel like that he'd have to be in cohorts with the sheriff, because like obviously the sheriff would look at the body, the coroner would look at the body, like unless Steve just paid everybody off. Alright, but what about Brent? Well, we know that Brent and Luke don't have the best relationship, and lately, in the summer 2000 timeline, we've seen Brent kind of looking out for Megan a little more and warning her to stay away from Ned and telling her about the private investigator and stuff, and he just like looks a little bit like confused or shocked after learning that his dad hired this private investigator. So it makes me wonder if maybe Brent decided to help Luke possibly fake his own death, or maybe he caused Luke's death and is feeling extremely guilty and is trying to compensate for it. Maybe Brent is also feeling guilty that the blame is falling on Megan. That's not what he wanted. Maybe he just wanted the blame to fall on Isabella, because we know that he's never really liked Isabella. And also, we did see in the summer timeline Brent trying to drown Luke, right? Even if it was just for fun. Like, it seems like Brent has no problem trying to play with his brother like that. Could have gone wrong. But it doesn't seem like it would fit with like what's happening at the end of this episode, but I don't know. Lastly, what about the sheriff? We've seen that he's Luke's biggest cheerleader, but could he be capable of more? I'm curious if we're ever gonna get an answer to why he was giving money to that person in the bar, or the envelope. I don't know if it was money, but like doing whatever it was that the girls saw him doing in the bar. We do know the sheriff knows how abusive Steve is to Luke. Maybe he helped Luke cover this up because he wants Luke to go be happy, help Luke fake his death. And as I've mentioned before, Luke went missing New Year's Day, but like I said, this body wasn't found till July, and somehow it was identifiable when it should have been pretty decayed, right? I mean, I don't have a medical degree or anything, but if it was floating in water for that long, like I get pruny after a bath for 10 minutes, like that body had to just not be fully recognizable. But like I said, not a crime expert. And also, I mentioned this last episode, but that seems like a long time for benzos to still be showing up in Luke's system, right? It just doesn't seem right to me, so I need anybody that has experience or knowledge about that kind of stuff to let me know if all those things are actually possible. But I'm like, what if the sheriff came and Luke confided in him? Then those details Luke might have shared about the benzos and the whatever and all of that, and now the sheriff's using him to scare the girls at this point and pin this on them. But I'm kind of like, why would the sheriff be after these girls so much unless, Luke lied about a bunch of stuff, which we've obviously seen that he does, to turn the sheriff on them, as maybe Luke's plan of revenge on the girls now. Now, there's also always the option of it being one of the two girls still, even though we saw them both in bed right before this. Someone comes showing up to the dock. That could obviously be just to throw us off as far as timing goes, but could he have called Isabella to come help him? We know that she's good at escaping and has money. Could she have helped him get away? Could they have made some kind of deal? Could he have tried to apologize to her and things went wrong and she pushed him over into the water? Who knows? But then there's always kind of the, oops, something actually went wrong. It was all a big accident, and now the girls are just panicking because everything leading up to what happened they think falls on them, because they don't actually know what happened after they left the cabin that night. So they're just panicking because they can't explain that, so they just look extremely guilty leading up to that time in Luke's life. But yeah, whatever happened on that dock with the person and Luke, whoever he's texted and sees, could that have got him pushed in the water and he was just too drugged to swim? But still, why wouldn't he have been found sooner? Because it seems like he was put up as missing pretty soon after that day. And I believe they said this was a lake, right? This isn't an ocean. Is this a lake? I'm gonna go with lake. details are escaping me right now, but I'm sure you'll let me know down in the comments if I got this wrong. But if it's a lake and Luke went missing, wouldn't they have combed that entire lake? How big is this lake? I guess it could be pretty big, but in 7 months you probably could have combed that whole thing. I'm just assuming, that they should have found the body before that. I feel like I could just keep rambling on and probably not make any sense, and I've probably flip-flopped all my theories since the last video or the video before that. All season I feel like they've just kept changing. But let's talk about the promo for the finale, because it shows the girls going back to the cabin and both looking pretty surprised that Luke isn't there. And then we see that Luke is officially declared missing. There's missing posters and the girls are like, what do? We got to keep our stories straight. But I'm still also confused at this moment of why Megan didn't clean up that bloody bedding right when they walked into the cabin and saw that Luke was missing. Why did we see her do that in the summer 2000 timeline, then trying to clean up all that blood and whatever? We then see that in this promo, another tape has come into the sheriff's possession, and I'm just gonna guess that it's the tape that Isabella took of what happened on New Year's with the gunshot and the fights and Luke's confessions and some stuff. Or it could be the security tapes, from that night as well, because we saw them haul in those tapes and the computer and stuff from Ned's house. But could it be something else? It just makes me think that Isabella keeps leaking stuff on purpose, but I gotta know why, because honestly all this stuff makes them both look bad. Like, is her hope that her and Megan can just be cellmates and spend forever together and then she doesn't have to share Megan? But in jail, you probably still would have to share Megan. But then in the promo, it seems like we have Brent eavesdropping on a conversation between Steve and Megan, and this also makes me definitely think and lean more towards Brent actually knowing more about what's been going on than he's been letting on. Then we see the sheriff charging Megan with Luke's murder and her face just being completely shocked. And we have some footage from the winter timeline of Luke standing on the dock, and then we see Steve running through the woods, but that could just be to throw us off because there's still a lot of time period there that would be in the winter timeline. That could be Steve running after they declared Luke's missing and he goes running to the water through the woods searching for him. We don't know. But the teaser ends with somebody splashing up in the water by the dock, and honestly, I can't tell who it is, and this is another part where I sat and paused and probably overanalyzed, clicking back and forth to see if I could tell anything about it. We've seen that at the moment Luke goes missing or whatever is on the dock, he has a knitted cable-like sweater, kind of, and he's wearing this big plaid coat with this, white lining here, and the person in the water kind of looks like they're wearing more maybe of a t-shirt, a long t-shirt maybe, or something shiny or something that's black. And I just don't think it looks like what Luke was wearing. And also, pausing it, I'm like, whose mouth does this look like? It's not Steve's because it doesn't look like there's any scruff. Could it kind of be Brent, or is it Luke? Is it somebody else? Is this person actually drowning, grasping for air? Maybe it's Luke and, he had a bunch of drugs in his system. He ended up in the water and that's how he drowns or something. Or is it just dude, we gotta get your clothes wet and let your stuff float around so that we can fake your death? Or was it an accident, a fight? They both ended up in the water. What if it was Brent and he got in a fight with Luke? It was an accident. They both went in the water, and then because Luke was incapacitated because of the drugs and a little sloggy, maybe he did end up drowning. Maybe Brent had something to do with it all along. I don't know. But yeah, I think I just wonder how many mysteries we're going to get solved and answers by the end of this season, what they're going to leave open for interpretation, because they definitely did that with season 1. They kind of wanted you to see both girls' side. We had people by the end of it, I feel like most were leaning towards Jeanette being more in the wrong, but both girls obviously did horrible things, so it was ooh, who morally did the worst? And it kind of left it open. I feel like maybe this season is going to be doing that too, even though it doesn't seem like as much of a moral dilemma. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious how they're going to make this a satisfying ending, because if it was an accident, then the only way you could make this kind of more exciting is that someone accidentally did it, and that person's also been messing with everybody to try to cover up what they did, and maybe that's the twisted web we have going on. But it could be fun to see that Luke is actually still alive. But I just gotta know what you all think, because I know this video is already extremely long and way longer than probably my other videos have been. So yeah, let me know if there's any clues that you picked up throughout the episodes that have you definitely thinking you know what happened, or leaning towards somebody more than other people, because as you can tell from this video, I am still flip-flopping all around. Do you think that Luke is actually alive, or do you think he's for sure not alive? Let me know all your thoughts and theories down below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can come back when I upload my finale recap and we can all vent about if we're satisfied by the ending of this season or not. And you can also check out more of my videos right over here. But as always, I'm Lisa. Thanks so much for listening to me ramble, and yeah, I'll see you next time. We'll see how this goes, right?